right, this is JP DeRaw, show number 208 here in March 6th, 2018. Tonight we got Tim Kimberly and myself, Mike Howard, on JP DeRaw, and I'm going to have a few topics to cover, and then at the end, I want to cover something that several people have asked me. I've talked about it in the past, my backup solution, and a backup horror story from somebody who was a former guest on the show. I don't see him out in chat, but he's published it, so it's not a secret, but it's a learning lesson for any of us who have things that we should be backing up. So we'll talk about that toward the end, so I don't bore you guys with that who are tired of hearing me about backing up. But if you're not backing up, it is something that you should be doing, and there's so many different solutions out there. Get to backing up. All right, Tim.
And you will be sorry if you don't.
Yeah, that day is going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Tim, some small company has in the past a little bit, you may not have heard of them, but I think they came out with something new recently that I don't know if anybody even cares about it, but we probably ought to talk about it a little bit, maybe a little 30 seconds or something about this thing that they released. Is it even would you even consider it a real camera?
Oh my God, you're really going to go there? I think we're the number 2 camera company now for full frame sales.
Really? What's the name of this company? Have I heard of them?
Sony, the one and only?
Yeah. So what is it they released?
They released a new full-frame mirrorless camera, the A7 III, which is obviously the third generation camera, and it's now a $2,000 full-frame mirrorless camera that is really going to put both Nikon and Canon in their crosshairs. It has so many. I was reading the specs on this camera. Now I know AD's been trying to get me to buy the A7 series. My problem is obviously I have the prior mount for my camera lenses, and I just can't come to parting ways with this.
So for somebody like me who is not up to speed on all the different Nikon, Sony gear, where does the A7 series fit in? You said that you don't have that and he's been trying to get you to buy that.
Correct. So
where does that fit in?
In respect to what?
Like
so
in their line, like in Nikon line, you have the consumer end, the prosumer end, and the pro end. And, like the D5 would be the top end for Nikon, and the D750 might be the high end of the prosumer.
Yeah, I think probably the difference is Sony has 2 different mounts. One is the A mount, one is the E mount, and the newer version is probably supplanting the old version, which is the more traditional SLR, or actually my camera is actually what they call SLT, or single lens translucent, because I don't have a prism in the top of my camera. The new cameras are even thinner, smaller, and also do not have the reflex for the mirror up the top, but it's a full frame sensor in the back of it. And I think this is the camera that Sony is really pushing now. Almost all the lenses they make are now coming out for this camera line, no longer for the old line. I was looking to see if they were going to update my camera. I had read rumors. I have the A77. This is the A7. And they have the A7 and the A9 series of this. And those are more definitely the prosumer. I think this is probably the consumer version of it, the A7, because they also have an A7R and an A7S. One of them has got like 42 megapixels, and I think that's the S, which is super low light camera, while the R is more for the speedier side, probably more for the sports related. But this camera, I was reading some of it. It now has a buffer in there for 177 JPEGs or 89 images in RAW, 40 images of uncompressed RAW. So now you're no longer getting hampered by your SD card. And actually, this one allows for 2 SD cards. It shoots 4K HDR video at 120 frames per second. It's just, and this is considered their entry model A7. So you still got the 7S and the 7R, which obviously, I anticipate they will be releasing the third versions of those probably within the next 6 months. But Sony is constantly, it's almost like every 6 months, they're releasing an updated camera, and Nikon and Canon. One of them, I don't know. I was just reading an article. I thought I read an article the other day that they are actually going to start getting into the mirror. I think it was Nikon.
I think it was Canon, actually. I think Canon.
Canon, and they know it's going to cannibalize their other cameras, but they know they're going to have to do this because these are the cameras that are selling, and the Sony passed Nikon as number 2 on the full frame camera sales last year. So,
So what was the megapixel on this one again?
24, I think it was.
24.
And yeah,
what
20.
And what'd you say what's the frame per second?
177
total
frames
buffer,
per second. I don't know if I saw that. I want to say I read the other day it was 10, but I don't know.
10's good. 10's good. I would think that it doesn't. A mirrorless camera doesn't have the same issues as a DSLR in its frames per second because you don't have that.
You don't have the slap back and forth, right?
Yeah, and you also don't you have built-in image stabilization?
Yes, and that's what I mean. I'm back from the old Minolta days, and that came right across with this. And mine is both sideways and vertical. I think this camera is now. It's got a 6-axis, I think. So it's upwards, vertical, horizontal, and then forward, backwards as well. So for every lens, you got image stabilization. I really like that versus a regular camera from Nikon or Canon. One of the other things that I read in this, which I thought was what was the other things that I read in this? It's got 15 stop. 15 stop dynamic range, which is huge. I mean, you think about that when cameras came out. You're lucky if you had 3 stops of dynamic range, and that's where all the HDR came from. So this camera, I mean, and as what they put in here is as an entry camera, it is way beyond what a lot of people
at
$2,000. That's not entry for.
Yeah.
That's not entry for me. But then again, I got to think my camera. I probably paid $1,700 for my body, so it's really not that far off. It's got a good battery life of 700 shots, which is good. I think I probably get about 450, and now I got a grip on my camera, so it's actually a little bit better. But got to give that back to my cousin one of these days. But
so I I'm still not tempted, although it is very interesting. And I'll get to that in a second. But you said 700 shots. That with a normal, well, I should say with my camera D500 with the grip. I can get 1,500 plus raw images. 1,500. Yeah, 1,500 plus raw images. But that's with the grip. Right. So will this camera come with the grip, so you can have the vertical shutter? They do sell it for it, but it's obviously it wasn't in this review, but they do sell one for it. And another question. So one of the things with these smaller cameras that I like with my bigger SLR is that the way it fits in my hand. And the way my hand comes around, it's almost like they made it for me, and it just fits right in there, really good. Do they make the grip on the side bigger so that you're not holding this tiny little camera? That was a complaint of the original A7, the A7 Mark II. They changed the grip to be better for that exact reason, because people did complain that it was a little too small in the hand. Yeah. So now I haven't picked up the 7.3, so I couldn't say anything about it. But so there's the A7 line, which you said there's the 7.3, the 7R, 7 S2, S2, and the 7R2, and then they also have an A9 range. And the A9 is the professional version. Okay. But I mean, these are also I know what's his name, the guy that did all the HDR photography. Trey Radcliffe, he switched over completely to the Sony line, and specifically this line. He doesn't get compensated by Sony. I know they approached him, but he just likes using the camera and feels it is so much better than anything else out there. Now, no doubt, I think sports photography, I think Canon has got the absolute lock on that. And we obviously saw the Olympic pictures from 2 weeks ago, the cameras that were there, and they were all Canon and Nikon. So, I think Sony is trying to get in. You're not going to, this is one of those things where you're not going to switch somebody that has a lot of lenses like yourself. You're not going to get me to switch to Canon or Nikon because of all my lenses. Heck, I can't even switch from my A mount to this E mount because it's a big investment. But as somebody new coming in, that's who I think they're looking to get. And
that's where this is going to be the big change.
Well, I don't know if I mentioned on this show or not, but I've had someone recently whose daughter is graduating college and who wanted to get her a camera. That's what she wanted. And was asking me for my advice. And I said, look, I'm biased toward Nikon. I'm a Nikon shooter. But let me ask you this. Do you have any glass already? Do you own any glass? And he said, no, we don't have anything. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. I gave him a Nikon to look at, but I said, you really should look at the Sonys. The Sonys are really coming on. They're going to be a little bit smaller body, and that may be something she likes. But I would not discount it. I would take them out, test it and take a look at it. They ended up buying a Sony. I don't know which one, but they ended up buying a Sony. I think that you mentioned Canon and being afraid of cannibalizing some of their DSLR line,
right? And
that may be true. But I've dealt with this with other businesses who had a legacy product that they were selling, and they had a team within the company who wanted to develop a newer product, a new line that compete with some of the other things that are starting to come up. Right. And the legacy people fought it internally tooth and nail. You got to imagine that's going on at Canon and Nikon. They have had all this time of dominating the market, and those people, I don't know, maybe at some point they thought this was a fad that would go away. They can't think that anymore, but they are probably still have some power within the company and have been holding it back. Why you more than likely have another team who's saying, we got to go. And the thing that these companies need to realize, and maybe Canon's coming around to that, is if you don't cannibalize yourself, someone else will.
Someone else, right, exactly.
So do you want the sales to stay within you and you just sell it this versus that? Or do you want new guy Sony or whoever else to come and sell to your customers? And that, Nikon and Canon have probably been too slow to react. And it sounds like Canon's starting to come around. Haven't heard the same thing on Nikon, but they're going to need to come around and realize that, I don't know, 10 years from now, what is the market for a DSLR?
Right.
Because these mirrorless cameras have advanced really fast.
Way too fast. And I think the problem you have is people are getting too comfortable using camera phones. So now, if you're going to take that next step up, what are you going to go to? Yeah, obviously, I think we've talked about the point and shoot cameras are gone.
Yeah.
So next step is going to be this. And if there's no brand loyalty, people are going to look at who's. Well, I think word of mouth is definitely going to happen out there, first of all, which is going to help people have it. But they're going to look to see who's innovating the most, and that is going to be what's going to drive it. I think so, at least.
Yeah. I think so too. And if right now a $2,000 camera is still a big decision.
Oh yeah, and as my man Flynn points out, the lenses for the Sony A7 line are not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, you're probably talking $500 a pop for a majority of lenses, if not more. I'm never one for really getting the kit lenses. I usually will buy my camera unless I can buy it with this stepped up camera. Like I got my last Sony with the 1650 2.8 because I didn't want I think it was 24 to 80 4.5. I was like, I really don't want that lens.
Yeah,
that's nothing to me.
That's interesting. You always hope that competition spurs, improvement in everybody. And
yes,
I think that we will see in the near term, if Canon starts doing mirrorless in a big way, Nikon has got to follow suit. I mean,
absolutely.
So it's going to keep going. And that would be great for me if they started going mirrorless and I was able to keep my lenses and just slap them on there. Hey, let me keep going that way. All right. Speaking of Canon, did you hear about this other story where Amazon was shipping out rocks instead of a camera? This guy here,
and not once, twice.
Yeah, well, they didn't send rocks the second time. They sent bricks. So this guy here, I don't remember his name. It's not relevant to the story.
The only relevant part about it is he's I think it was a vlogger, so a video blogger, and he was videotaping the opening of it. And if my first blush on this is I don't believe the person.
Yeah, you never know with these stories. So it could have been faked, even though it looked like he cut the tape and it was still sealed, you never know. But so with that caveat that it could be fake, let's talk about what happened here. So he had ordered a Canon 1D Mark III, Mark II.
Mark II.
1DX Mark II, $6,000 camera from Amazon. And, you know, if you buy from Amazon, which I buy a lot from Amazon,
so do I.
I bought our TV from Amazon, which turned out to be a great experience. One of the things I look for is, do they have Prime? Is it Prime? And that gives you some comfort that, you know, it's not coming from a third party sometimes. You know, these third parties, you kind of wonder if it's, you know, how much better is it than an eBay seller that's questionable. But if it's Prime and it looks like it's coming from Amazon, you feel pretty good that it's safe. Right. So he ordered the camera, opened the box, and it was filled with rocks that weighed roughly about
the same price,
the camera weighed. So of course, you know, being very upset, he gets on with Amazon. Amazon customer service is generally pretty good. It sounded like they were here, except you know, they offered to ship him a new one, and they gave him a $20 Amazon gift card, I think, and he was not too happy about the $20 Amazon gift card. But, you know, reality is, if they're replacing the gear, I mean, what do you want? I mean, in the end, all you need is the gear. So the $20 is just sorry for your delay in getting your gear. And they ensured that it would it would be fine. You know, the next shipment would be good. They would ensure that it would be good. So he got another shipment. And this one turned out to be bricks.
and that was videoing it as well.
That's the one he videotaped. I think that I saw that he videotaped the opening of the box. And obviously he was upset. You know, here you are. Who knows how long this is taking to get it? But he got this thing, and it was bricks the second time. What it turned out to be is, while it said on the website, on Amazon's website, that it was coming from Amazon, really it was a third-party vendor who was doing it. And what I'm suspecting happened was that at the warehouse of this third-party vendor is probably one of two things. Either an employee is stealing it and replacing it with rocks, and figure by the time they figure this out and figured it was me, I'm long gone. Or it could have even been somebody who orders the camera, returns it, but returns it with rocks, and if they leave it, you know, still shrink wrapped, the people who receive it may not double check it. Feel that it feels about right on the weight. It's still shrink wrapped. Let's put it back on the shelf, and, you know, we'll sell it to the next person. So it could have been, you know, an employee, or it could have been that they just didn't check what they got back from a return. In any case, you know, Amazon gave him, I think, they returned his money, gave him $1,000 gift card, and then he went ahead and bought it from B&H.
B&H.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't live all that far from B&H, and a lot of times when I work in the city on the way back to the Long Island Railroad, I walk right past B&H, and I've gone in there and shopped several times. And, you know, I think the internet has really helped their business. Well, I helped the consumer, because the prices have definitely come down, and they're very competitive to anything you see on the internet. So I have no problems ever shopping there, and I know what I'm buying is, because you used to always worry about, and I don't think you see this as much anymore with cameras, the gray market camera versus the USA warranty.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to, if you think of it back in camera magazines years ago, they would sell cameras and show both of the prices. And I don't recall seeing that anymore in the past 5, maybe 10 years.
Right. I don't hear about that much anymore. It used to be a big thing that people were buying them intentionally, or in some cases, buying them unintentionally, buying these gray market cameras. And they didn't know about it till they went to get it repaired. But I really, to be honest, yeah, you're right. I have not heard any stories about that recently. So I don't know if I'm just not hearing them, or they actually is not a problem anymore. Yeah,
I'm going to guess it's gone.
Very good.
Hopefully.
Well, it's an interesting story. You know, go out there. I have the links in the show notes if you want to go see it. But to see his reaction on at least the second video where he gets bricks, you know, it'd be frustrating.
I think I would vomit if that happened to me, because you don't know if the other side, if they're going to believe you.
Exactly. Yes.
That would be my biggest worry about it. And, oh yeah, no, you're lying. And I've heard Amazon has been very, very good with whenever there's been an issue. And I think in the probably 1,000 orders I've done from Amazon, and that, sadly, I'm not joking about that. I think I could think of twice where I've had an issue. The first time they corrected it instantly. The second time they, matter of fact, and it's a stupid story. I bought one of those instant pot pressure cookers back around just before Thanksgiving, and it went on sale, and I ordered it. It was delivered the day after Thanksgiving, and finally I decided to open up the box, and I'm reading the instructions, and I'm reading, and I'm like, something doesn't make sense here. And I'm looking, I'm like, my God, they sent me the wrong version. They sent me the small version instead of the large version. And it was like the $39 version versus the $150 version.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I called them up. They send it back. They said, well, we don't have it in stock. 3 weeks later, it comes back in stock. And I call them up and I said, well, I want to pay the same price. Well, you missed out on the deal. I'm like, I didn't miss out on the deal. I bought it.
You the wrong thing, yeah.
So I had to get through a supervisor, and finally I got it for that price. But I was actually surprised that I had that much of an issue.
I've had a few issues like that and was able to resolve them. And somebody out there, Jan, says she'll buy refurbished. So generally, when I'm going to go buy photography equipment, I check the two main sites I'm checking is Adorama and Amazon. I'm checking those two and looking at which one I'm going to buy. I've had deliveries that went to like 2 houses down, and I get the text saying that it's been delivered, and but I have cameras all around the house, so if everything about breaking in, I got cameras everywhere, and I can see no motion went off, so nothing's been delivered at my house. So I pull up the cameras and I can see, oh, there went the UPS truck right by my house. It didn't stop, so delivered it to my neighbor. Okay, and fortunately, the neighbor we have a good relationship, and they bring it down to me, and that's only happened a couple of times. But Amazon has been pretty good. So I think while he had a story that didn't go very smooth, I don't think that's the norm, and I don't hesitate from buying from Amazon.
No, I don't. I do not either.
Yeah,
sadly, I don't. All right, speaking of Amazon, did you hear his net worth today, Jim Bezos?
No, it's just astronomical. It's crazy.
He's the first person to pass the $100 billion mark.
That's insane.
112. He went up $39 billion in 1 year.
All I can think about is all those years ago when I thought the stock was overpriced and I didn't buy it.
Yeah. I remember the original commercials where it was talking about, is your stadium big enough to house our books? And you think about what they sell now. Yeah. Man, everything.
It is crazy.
They bought the Ring doorbell, which I know you have as well.
I have a bunch of those, yes.
Yeah.
All right. You had a story about another rocket story.
Yes. Let me open that one up. Yes. What I thought was intrigued me first about the article was when I was down on the Disney cruise over the summer, we got on the way out, we saw a rocket take off. And then when we came back into port, we saw a rocket take off. And the first one was one of the SpaceX rockets. The second one was one of these, which is here, the Atlas V rocket. And man, that was a rocket that just literally took off like a rocket. However, in this story, the photographer John Krause is a photojournalist, and he got some great opportunities to place his cameras near the launch pad. And when I say near the launch pad, one of them was, I think it was 500 feet, and the other one was 300 feet.
Which is insane.
But you really think about it, where he had these lenses. Now, he said he was nowhere near it. They were triggered by sound, and he said the sound, if you would have been close, the sound alone would have killed you. Nevertheless, obviously, you see what happens to one of the lenses. So what surprised me when he first talked about it is he was using Nikon D7000s, which is not the surprising part, but he said he only had them wrapped in grocery bags with a hole cut in them. And I'm thinking to myself, that's all you had your cameras wrapped in was just...
Our Nikons can take a beating, buddy.
Apparently, but he showed the first picture here that Mike is scrolling to was the one that was about 500 or 600 feet away, and it was had a Nikon 8200 2.8 zoomed in to capture the shot of the rocket's engines and the four solid rocket boosters, which I think is an amazing and absolutely beautiful shot.
It is.
I love this shot. I mean, and every once in a while you see it, and the first few times I always watched a rocket, you never realize that the smoke that's generated from the rocket is actually water that is being turned into steam, which saves the and I forgot how many tens of thousands of gallons of water are dropped underneath the rocket right before the launch. But so this camera had absolutely no issues. And you think that's only 500, 600 feet away. The second lens he had placed 300 feet away, and it was right next to the flame trench. So right where all of the these flames that we see here go shooting right past the camera. And he's got a series of 3 pictures. The first one was 15 seconds, which was right in there after the rocket launched. Then 5 seconds later, at the 20-second mark, you could see now the cloud coming in. And then another one at 26 seconds, which was obviously when all of the material from the rocket, and they said it's partially the water and the solid exhaust, strikes the lens. And he talks about what it was. And they were told afterwards, do not even touch your face because all that material is likely on you and it will get all over your face. So you had to go wash your hands. However, his 2.8 or not 2.8,
8 millimeter
fisheye lens was totally destroyed. And he had just bought it before the rocket launch. And you can see here the picture. Everything that's on this lens is the remnants of the solid rocket fuel that just coated the lens, and you could see that behind it is that little yellow shopping bag, which really just blows my mind that that's what you would leave it in. And then the next lens, it was just pretty much caked on, and he was able to scrub it off. However, you could see the lens element itself was absolutely destroyed. Yeah. And he said people had talked to him about why didn't he use a filter on it, and he talked about how the filter would have degraded the actual photos. And this is a once in a lifetime shot, or probably not a very often shot.
Yeah.
And he doesn't say how much he paid for the lens, but it was probably several hundred, and it was probably worth it.
Well, with the images he got, hopefully he was able to sell those things and easily recoup the money, the cost of the lens. And I don't know if the camera actually survived. Did it say that? Whether the camera survived?
He said his cameras had no wear at all. I mean, like you said, Nikons, they just
rock
take it
solid.
Rock solid.
Well, you can send them to space, or you can watch the things that go to space.
Yeah. But I couldn't believe it was an 8 millimeter Rokinon.
Yeah.
I never heard of that. Now I'm going to look and see how much that lens is.
Yeah. And he's in this image that we're showing here, he's saying that's not sand or dirt on the lens, that's pitting.
It's only a $250 lens, so it's not even. It's not. You know what? It's a disposable lens. Yeah. You get this type of shot, I think I'd be willing to forego it, because that first shot of the rocket taking off. Yeah, that's a nice shot from the fisheye one, as well as obviously the close up of the plume.
About, that one is just incredible.
That's awesome. That's the fisheye one. Yeah. So that's 300 feet away.
And that one's incredible. Both of those are incredible.
Yeah, I mean the follow up ones, the 20-second and the 26-second. Yeah, there's nothing there, but those two, that's just amazing shots.
Yeah, that is gorgeous. Very interesting. All right. So I don't know how he was able to. I'm sure he knew somebody, or how did he get the ability to put his cameras that close?
Yeah, he had a contact that was able to put him there. But okay. I mean, he's a photojournalist, so I don't know if he's going to ever get to do it again. But yeah, good for him.
Yeah, no, great work.
And he is from Florida, so I think that also helped.
Yeah, great shot.
But I was there, and I think when you're at the Port Canaveral, you're about 6 miles away, and it's still a beautiful sight. But man, I can't imagine being that close.
Yeah, Jan says he can make the price back by selling those images. Hopefully, he was able to sell them. Yeah, at that cheap of a lens, that should be easy to recover. Yeah. All right, our last story here before we go into the last thing I had about the backing up was this story about the bride ordered to pay $89,000 because she talked bad about the wedding photographer. So apparently she hired, it sounded like maybe like a wedding coordinating type company that did a lot of stuff, that not just the photography, they might have coordinated other things for her. And she was under the assumption that the person she was talking to was going to take the photos, but the contract she signed didn't say that. Contract just said that that company would be taking the pictures. So the photographer had one of their other photographers take the photos. And what's not known in the story is the quality of the photos. We don't know that the photos were not good. So we can assume that the photos were, of fine quality here, or of unknown quality, I should say. But the bride was not very happy, and started posting all over the place that, one, she wasn't going to pay for it, and trashing the company. What was Amara Wedding or something? No.
Yeah, Amara Wedding.
Amara Wedding. So trashing the company to the point where the company was getting so much backlash and so much, I think her post started going viral, so much backlash and so much hate mail that they actually went out of business.
Right. She could no longer get any new customers.
Yeah.
And reading some of the comments that she had posted out there were absolutely horrific. And she got caught for it.
Yeah, and this was a Canadian case, but here in the United States, you cannot defame people and do stuff like that without there being potential consequences. So she was posting all this stuff, and some things that we do have in the United States, freedom of speech, but you can't do certain things that harm other people. I'm not a lawyer, so don't quote me on any of this. But apparently, at least in Canada, this bride went beyond the normal complaining that you can do online, to the point where it drove this person out of business. And I think the bride actually took the photographer to court, small claims court, to try and get the images without having to pay, and then ended up going the other way. And the company sued her and got $89,000. Now, $89,000 sounds like a lot. I wouldn't, if I had to pay that to somebody, that'd be a lot of money for me to have to pay. Yeah. But if my business went out of business, $89,000 is not going to do me a whole lot of good.
No, it's not going to do a lot. Because she was charging, I think, $6,000 for the signing.
Yeah.
So you think that's one customer? So you're talking about 10 weddings here.
Yeah.
Which you're doing obviously in less than a year. So that's bad. And some of the comments she wrote, "This is a major scam shot and deceitful photography mill business engaged in extortion, dishonesty, unfair practices, bait and switch, and other dirty tactics, lies to its I mean, she just went on and on.
Yeah.
And the judge threw the book at her. But $89,000 is not enough for your business. I mean, maybe your business wasn't doing well, but from when I looked up the business, it looked like it actually had some good reviews, and then it was reported as being closed, which is sad.
Yeah. So, and it's a couple comments out in chat. So, my man Flint says, "Good luck getting the money."
Yeah, absolutely.
That's often the case with these lawsuits. Is the first round goes one way, then somebody appeals and it goes some other way. Plus, actually, let's say you awarded that company $100,000, $500,000. You still got to get the money from the person. Mm-hmm. If the person doesn't have the money, you don't know. But here in the U.S., if that stands, I don't know about Canada, this was a Canadian case, but in the U.S., if the court order stands, they will garnish your wages. And mm-hmm. while you may not have the money today, anytime you get money in the future, especially if you're getting a W-2, you're working for a company who's doing that, paying you, they will garnish your wages and they will try and collect it that way. So it may take a while, but you'll have that hanging over you forever. So, and then if you appeal and you win, get it reduced or something like that, then it can go away. But that's all, once you've lost, the advantage is now against you. The advantage is mm-hmm. for the one who won, and now you're going to have to sue to get that back, and that's more cost. And sometimes spend another $30,000-$40,000 on lawyer fees to not win may not be worth it.
Yeah, I'm reading another article. A small class action was dismissed, and Chan won an counterclaim against Layao, and at the point offered an apology, but it was too late. So, yeah. I mean, you put somebody out of business. Yeah, the lesson here, and
I hear horror stories from wedding photographers all the time about their bridezilla or momzilla or maybe even groomzilla. I don't know, but dealing with customers is not always the easiest thing to do. But customers have to remember that they can take it too far. We all have to remember too, you don't want to be publicly trashing somebody, and everything you post out there stays mm-hmm. out there. Even if you think you delete it, they can still go back and get it. Well, I hope this Kitty Chan gets up and running under another business or something, because that really sad. It is really sad. And I don't know the whole story with all that, but to do something like that, to publicly shame somebody, to drive them out of business, is really just too much. I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure we've all dealt with people who are just, do you treat people like that in real life? I mean, why is everybody got to be such a jerk to each other. Just be nice.
It's easy to be nice.
Yeah, it's easy to be nice. What is up with that? Well, all right. So that's our last story, but I wanted to talk about, remember Jordan Yance? Did I say his last name right? He's not out there. He had the Picture Monk website, if you remember that. He came on. He's a real estate photographer. He now has a new show. I think it's more from the Picture Monk over to, I'm going to have to put this in the show notes because I don't remember the exact name, but it's something like Going Full Time. He's blogging and doing a show about becoming a full-time photographer. So if you had any desire to, take your photography to full-time, maybe that's a dream, or maybe it's you're already a weekend, part-time photographer and you would dream to go full-time or whatever else. He has a good show where he's talking about that process of going full-time. So over on the Picture Monk website, he had a ton of posts that he had done over the years, all this work, all these, videos he had posted there, all this kind of stuff. The videos, I think, are still on YouTube. But, I talk about backing up your photos all the time,
Yes.
backing up all that stuff. If you run a photography business and you have it on a website, so you should have a website. If you run a photography business, if you're trying to get clients, social media presence is important, but you also need a home base, which is your website, right? So, you never know what Facebook's going to do to you or Instagram's going to do to you, or like 80s happened on YouTube where they're demonetizing all his shows because of new rules that they passed. If your business only lives on social media, you're at the total whim of whatever they wake up tomorrow and decide. That's why you need to have your own website where you control it. So if your host goes out of business, you own it. You can just take it somewhere else, right? So that's your home base. If in that case, if you're just doing this for a hobby, you don't necessarily need that. But if you're doing this for a business, you need that. It's important that you back up the website.
Oh yeah.
And if you are WordPress, which, I think that WordPress now runs like over 30% of all websites in the world.
Wow.
But if you are WordPress, and I'm sure there's other things for this, there's plugins. I use Updraft. I think I pay for the Plus version, Updraft Plus. If you run that website, you need to have a plugin that will do the backup for you. Mine, I have the Updraft Plus, and I pay for it, so it's on each one of my websites, and it backs up every day to I think to Dropbox and to maybe one other place. I can back up to multiple places, but I back up to those too, because you never know when, if a virus hits it, that's one thing. You never know when something goes wrong. In this case, what had gone wrong was something happened with either his domain name or his hosting service, where you had it on auto renew. I have a lot of my domains, so JPEG to RAW is on auto renew. I don't have to, as long as my credit card is still valid, which, that is not valid forever, it will auto renew and I don't have to worry about it. I see the emails come up and I know it's coming, but I know it's going to auto renew. Well, sometimes what happens is you get a new credit card because it has new expiration date or whatever's happened, and those services that are charging you aren't going to work, and you got to go and update that. Well, something happened with that for him where it didn't update, and they shut down his account. And then whenever he found out about it, he called him and said, "Hey, I'm ready. I need to pay. What can happen here?" And they said, "It's too late. It's been too many days. And oh, by the way, we've already deleted everything." So all that work, all those years of all those posts are gone forever. He has no way. Man. He had no backup, so he has no way to recreate it. So even in the best plans like I have, where I have the auto renewal set and that you should be set it and forget it, you got to be backing up.
Check.
Yeah. The other thing is like I mentioned, let's say you were Bluehost or you with GoDaddy or something like that, and you're totally frustrated with their customer service. And this sounds like I'm running into an ad in just a second, but I'm not going to run into an ad. We don't do ads here. You're totally frustrated with those services and you want to move to a new one. Using something like Updraft, and I don't get anything from them. Not advertising them, it's just who I use. Using somebody like them, you can take your backup and reinstall it somewhere else. I've done that. I moved from Bluehost to where we are now. And by doing that, I just installed it in a new host, had it up and running, and that's good. So, that lesson of backing up is not just for your photos and so your computer files at home, but if you have a website for your business or one where you are, potentially going to get business down the road, make sure you're backing it up.
Right. Absolutely.
And my man Flint asks, is WordPress still using Flash? I don't know if it can use Flash. I don't, like ours, JPEG Raw doesn't have Flash.
Yeah, and you see less and less using Flash, I think.
Yeah. So with that story, so that's the first backup story. I've been asked, I think in the Facebook group, and I know somebody emailed me, what have I done for my backup? And I thought I'd talked about it on here, but maybe I have not. So I'll tell you what I'm doing now for backup is okay, so let's talk about backup for just a second. You should have the original file, a local backup, and an offsite backup, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's like.
And what's the difference between the two? I think that's the question. People say, well, why do I need a local and why do I need an offsite?
So the reason for a local, review your local as what you're going to do 99% of the time. If something goes wrong with the original, the local is your fast backup where your first choice, you're going to go and get that backup and do it from there. Easy to restore, hopefully. And it's your first choice. The offsite one should be considered your emergency backup. For one, if you have a lot of files like I do, backing up offsite is going to take a long time. If you are bandwidth restricted or data restricted, your backup offsite may be manual. You may put it on a drive and walk it off somewhere else. And so that backup that way is not as easy to recover from. Why do you need both, a local and an offsite? So if I had a flood, pipe burst and flooded my entire basement, I would lose my original, and the backups, which are off the floor, let's say it got that high, it would do that. Or if the house burned down, I would lose my local backup and my original. If somebody broke in to the house and found both of them, I would lose both of them. They took them. So while your home one, your local one is going to be the main recovery backup, it's also at about the same amount of risk from environmental conditions as your regular original file. That's why you need an offsite file. So for me, I'm doing two things. The one thing I'm doing for the local backups is I'm using a program called Acronis. And I have that on all the different PCs. It is a paid option. You do have to buy it. So I have it on each PC, and they all back up to my file server. My file server is Unraid is the software. If you want to build your own system, this is a great software. If you're not into building your own systems, then look at like a Drobo or a QNAP or a Synology. They're not cheap, and you got to buy the device. And you got to buy the drives. But look at the NAS version, the network attached storage version, not the version that plugs in USB in your computer, because then it's just sitting right there. And you really, if at all possible, you wanted to have it in a different place in your house from the original. So look at those. So I use Acronis to back up locally. And then I have Backblaze on each one of the PCs to back up offsite from the PC. Coming from CrashPlan, there is some differences with Backblaze. One, they don't have a family plan, so you can't buy like $100 family plan and cover 10 computers. It's like $50 for every computer. So it's going to be, if you have multiple computers, it's going to be a little more expensive. And the restore process is a little different. The versioning of files, where you can have multiple versions of the same file, is a little different with Backblaze. There are certain folders Backblaze just will not let you back up, like the program files, those kind of things. It will not let you back those up. Those are all kind of more the negatives with Backblaze. The positive of Backblaze is the footprint, the computer resources it takes up is dramatically less.
Wow.
I mean, in my case, where I have several 100,000 photos on that drive. It was CrashPlan would take up somewhere close to 4 gig of RAM all by itself.
Wow.
It's just insane, the amount of RAM. With Backblaze, it's like 150 meg. So let's say 3 to 4 gig versus 150 meg. Yeah. It is night and day difference.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. That said, and I've been very vocal about my being upset about CrashPlan. On my Unraid server, I'm still running CrashPlan, backing up the server with using their business plan to them. So I'm backing up the server, backing up the different computers, and I have had to restore files before with that. So find, if you're wanting to build something at home and you say, I can't go spend, $1,500 on a Synology box with drives, even an old computer or laptop with USB drives stuck somewhere else in your house, you can use a Cronus to back up to those things.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking to get like a QNAP or something, but you just, the box itself is $800. Then you got to get the drives. And you know what I never get? I would get probably, if I did it, I'd probably put 8 terabyte drives in there. Why is it that if you buy a standalone drive, just a bare drive, it's like $280, but if you buy an 8 terabyte in a USB enclosure, it's like $150, and it's the same drive in there?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm always worried about those enclosure hard drives. They're breathing properly, or they what's the quality of the drive in there? So the other question I got to ask is, what drive should I buy? And I will tell you that my sample that I have here is going to be small. I might have 60, 70 hard drives in the house, but that in the grand scheme,
60, 70,
that in the grand scheme of things is not a lot.
No, it's not. But probably just about anybody that you talk to, that's a huge amount.
It is. So I have them die. With that many, I have some die every now and then. Like last show, I had an SSD die. Yeah, which is crazy. But Backblaze does a great an annual review of all their hard drives, and you got to imagine that somebody like that, they buy thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of drives, and they disclose their failure rates. And I was seeing, my experience has been somewhat similar to their experience, in that Seagate drives were dying for me left and right. So I am done with Seagate. I am completely wiped out of Seagate. If I had I can't get to them easily, but I've taken them all apart, and I have all those little cylinders, or whatever, those discs, those platters sitting right there. A whole bunch of them, all from Seagate drives. So what drives am I buying? I'm buying the HEST. You're
making yourself a nice big necklace, right?
yeah. Nice big necklace. I'm buying the HEST.
I have Western Digitals, Hitachi. And I'm probably switching over to the Hitachis.
Hitachi NAS drives.
Aren't they owned now by Western Digital?
They are, yeah.
Even though I think they're still separate, they definitely different labels and everything. But they've always come out near the top of the reliability.
They do, and I know that some of the people listening may be thinking, "Oh, Mike's talking about backing up again," but I would tell you that not that everybody listens to us, but I hear every month some photographer who's lost their stuff. Jordan, it's a little bit different story with Jordan in that it was his website, not his photos. But you got to think about everything. If you're not backing it up, it's just a matter of time before you're going to lose it. In his case, he actually thought, and in many cases like this, the web host will back up your files. But if your account, let's say you're on vacation, let's say I finally got to go to Iceland. I'm in Iceland. My credit card that they use to renew my account has been changed, and they can't do it. They send me an email. I don't see it because I'm in Iceland. By the time I get back, they've already closed my account and deleted my files. And I'm out of luck. Jan says Western Digital. They're okay drives. I've had a few of those fail, but they're better than the Seagate drives. If you're going to buy the Western Digital, I would get the Reds. The Reds. Well, for a server or for a NAS, yes. Yeah. I think I'm trying to think what I have in my server here, and I probably have a mixture of greens on my RAID array, and they're, I'm trying to think how old those are, and I have 5 in that RAID array, and man, they're probably going to die on me.
But I just checked the partition, and it's showing they're all okay. 87 degrees. I know sooner or later it's going to go on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those were all, sadly, those are, when I bought them, that was pre-Thailand flooding, when I bought the dryers for $69 a piece.
Yeah.
And I know I had a couple die that I had to replace and rebuild the RAID. And that's just my, pretty much my Plex movie server, which I don't even know how much I use anymore. It's probably running in there for no reason.
Yeah. Very good. Do you... We have a little bit of an issue.
Uh-oh.
This is going to be interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and head into post-show.
Okay.
All right. So that's the topics for tonight, and then hang around for the post-show to hear what the issue is. All right. Until next week. Until we're out next week, right, Tim?
Yeah. Next week I'm not going to be around.
Yeah. So until next show, keep it raw. Oh, we are here. AD and I are here this Sunday doing a photo review show. So be looking for us then. So until next show, keep it raw. Good night, everybody.